Dear friends, we are coming close to the end of this series on structural geology. We have seen in the previous episodes how the structure of rocks on the surface of the earth or deep into the crust are analyzed with the help of the structural elements present in them, both planar and linear. We have seen how we measure the orientation of planar and linear structural elements. We have seen how the orientation helps us in understanding the structure. We have seen how there are different types of structures developed as a result of applied directed stress onto the rocks. Some structures form in response to the applied directed stress by deforming in a plastic or ductile manner, and some structures form by responding in a brittle manner by fracturing. We have seen how other minor structures develop together with the major ductile and brittle structures in response to a directed stress, and we have observed the relationship between the minor structures formed during a deformational phase and the major structures produced during that phase. Now that we are close to the end, we have also discussed about how the deformation of rocks takes place, under what conditions ductile deformation happens, and when does rupture or brittle failure occurs. We have discussed how the stress is defined, how the deformation or strain is defined as a result of the applied stress. At the end, we will be studying how large scale geological structures are analyzed for interpreting the structural evolutionary history of the area. For this purpose, we must keep in mind that we have seen how measurement of a structure, planar or linear, is done, but we must remember that to analyze the structure in over a large area, it is necessary to make numerous measurements, either the orientation of planes like bedding or foliation, or lines like intersection lineation or fold axis. It is not always possible to use these data, the huge number of data that are collected, individually or singly. So, for the purpose of analysis, the large number of data should be handled in a statistical manner, and in the last two episodes we shall be discussing the ways of analyzing the structure of an area by using statistical methods. To handle the large number of measurements that are made in the field of three-dimensional orientation of planes and lines, it is necessary to plot them in two dimension. Over the last 60 years, the first publication was by Busher in 1944. Over the last 60 years, the use of a projection of three-dimensional data on two dimension, known as stereographic projection, is in vogue. The concept of stereographic projection will be easier to understand if you first try to understand the spherical projection of three-dimensional data. Let us imagine that an observer is standing at the center of a sphere made up of glass. If a plane passing through the center is drawn, it intersects the lower hemisphere along a curved line, which is known as the spherical projection of that plane. Now, the ends of that plane on the equatorial plane marks the direction of strike of the inclined plane. When the points on the spherical projection of a plane on the lower hemisphere is joined with the north pole of the sphere by straight lines, these straight lines will pierce the median horizontal plane of the sphere and form a curved line, which is known as the cyclographic projection. So, a three-dimensional plane can be projected onto the two-dimensional median plane of the sphere by this method. The cyclographic projection of the spherical line or the line of intersection of the plane on the lower hemisphere is known as the stereographic projection, and the median plane, equatorial plane of the sphere is known as the median projection plane. Though at the beginning it may appear a bit abstract to understand the principles of stereographic projection, students of structural geology will find that the treatment of a large number of data measured in the field is very convenient if a stereographic grid, also known as a stereographic net or a wolf net, which can be easily carried into the field in a backpack if the data are plotted on this. In the next few topics, subtopics, we shall be discussing how planes and lines are plotted on a stereographic projection. Let us imagine that a plane striking north-south and dipping towards east is passing through this imaginary sphere. On the lower part of this sphere, on the lower hemisphere, this easterly dipping plane will have a carved line of intersection that is inclined towards the east. If we join all the points on this spherical projection onto the north pole of the sphere, the cyclographic or stereographic projection of the spherical projection will be obtained on the median equatorial plane, and this carved line that intersects the periphery of the equatorial plane, the line of intersection of the equatorial plane with the sphere, it will intersect the periphery of the equatorial plane at two diametrically opposite points, which are actually the points of intersection of the north-south horizontal line or strike line of the plane. Thus, on the median plane we have a carved line that intersects the periphery at two diametrically opposite points and has an uniform curvature towards east. The curvature of the plane or the stereographic projection of the plane will be a factor of the amount of inclination. Let us think about a horizontal plane. A horizontal plane will intersect the sphere along the equatorial plane. So, its stereographic projection will be the periphery of the equatorial plane, while a vertical plane striking north-south will intersect the lower hemisphere along a curved line, but the cyclographic or stereographic projection of this curved line will be a straight line on the equatorial plane running north-south. So, the inclination of the plane will gradually become reflected in the stereographic projection in the distance of the stereographic projection on the median plane. The horizontal along the periphery and the vertical along the central straight line, it gradually increases the amount of dip from periphery towards center. A carved line that intersects the periphery at two diametrically opposite points is known as a great circle, and the stereographic projection of a plane is always a great circle. If we know the strike true dip amount and true dip direction of any plane, we can easily plot the stereographic projection of the plane on the horizontal median plane. While obtaining the stereographic projection of an inclined line, let us think about it passing through the center and intersecting the lower hemisphere. It will intersect the lower hemisphere at a point. When this point is joined with the north pole of the sphere, this line of joining will intersect the median or equatorial plane of the sphere at a point. Thus, the stereographic projection of an inclined line passing through the center will be a point somewhere in between the periphery and the center of the median plane. A line which is horizontal will be plotted on two diametrically opposite points on the periphery, while a vertical line will be plotted as a single point at the center. The distance from the center towards the periphery, gradually decreases the amount of plunge. Stereographic projection of a plane and the stereographic projection of a line can be easily represented with the help of a tracing paper or transparent paper placed on a stereographic grid. Let us talk about the stereographic grid now. To obtain the stereographic net or stereographic grid, we may think about a number of planes having identical strike, say north south, and dipping at various angles towards east or west. If we obtain the stereographic projection of all these planes, they will be a series of great circles with the vertical one running straight through the center and the gradually gentler ones becoming more and more curved as we proceed towards the periphery until we reach the horizontal. Now, if we draw on a circle all these planes, preferably at a regular interval of 2 degrees, then we can draw the stereographic projection of any plane on a piece of tracing paper or transparent paper placed on this grid. We will simply rotate the tracing paper so that the given direction of strike coincides with the north and south of the stereographic net, and measure out the amount of dip from the periphery towards the center in the direction in which the plane dips. For example, a northeast southwest striking plane dipping towards southeast can easily be drawn on the stereographic projection by marking the northeast and southwest directions on the transparent paper, rotating it coaxially with the center of the stereographic net, so that the northeast coincides with the north end of the grid and the southwest direction of the paper coincides with the southern direction of the grid. Now, southeast is coinciding with the east direction of the grid. We measure out the amount of dip from the east end on the periphery and trace out the great circle that is drawn on the stereographic net. Then we rotate the transparent paper back to the original position and we have the stereographic projection of the northeast southwest striking and southeasterly dipping plane. As planes are represented by great circles on the stereographic projections, cones will be represented as small circle. Let us imagine a series of straight lines passing through the center and making a fixed angle with the horizontal line at the northern end and at the southern end of the sphere. All these lines making a constant angle with the horizontal line will define a half cone, which will intersect the lower hemisphere along a semicircle. If all the points on this semicircle are joined with the north pole of the sphere, all these lines will intersect the median plane along a half circle around the southern or northern end. This is known as a small circle. The difference between a great circle and a small circle is that in case of a great circle, the two ends intersect the periphery of the stereographic projection at two diametrically opposite points, that is, the angle between these two ends is 180 degrees, while in case of a small circle, the two ends of the circle intersect the periphery at angular distances identical with the northern or southern end of a horizontal line. For plotting a line whose plunge amount and plunge direction is known, the process is similar to the one for plotting a plane, the stereographic projection of a plane. We put a transparent paper on the stereographic net and rotate it so that the plunge direction coincides with any of the vertical planes, either north south or east west, and then from the periphery towards the center we count out the amount of plunge. The amount of plunge will be counted against small circles drawn at 2-degree intervals against the northern and southern end on the stereographic net or stereographic grid. The point thus obtained will give us the stereographic projection of the line. Now, if the paper is rotated back to its original position, we have a point inside the circle which represents our given line. If you remember, the orientation of a line can also be defined in terms of pitch or the angle between that inclined line and the strike line of an inclined plane on which the line lies. This can also be represented in the stereographic projection. If we know the strike of the inclined plane, we mark those on the transparent paper called the overlay with the help of the stereographic net. Then when we know the amount of pitch and the direction of the strike with which the acute angle is made, we rotate the transparent paper so that the strikes coincide with the northern and southern end of the stereographic net, and along the given great circle the amount of dip of the plane is known. So, along the given great circle with the help of the small circles we measure out the amount of pitch and plot the point which is the stereographic projection of the given line. Thus, a plane and a line can be plotted with the help of the stereographic net on the overlay in the form of great circles and points when the plunge or pitch of the inclined line is given. Please remember that a horizontal line is plotted as 2 points on the periphery, 2 diametrically opposite points, because it will intersect the lower hemisphere at 2 diametrically opposite points, while a vertical line will be plotted as a point at the center of the projection, because the spherical projection of it is vertically below the north pole of the sphere. Now, let us see how with the help of stereographic projection we can find out the orientation of the line of intersection of two planes, measure the angle between two planes, or given the stereographic projection of a plane or a line, how we can find out its orientation. If the orientation of two planar structures or the two limbs of a fold are known, to obtain the orientation of the hinge line, which is the line of intersection of the two limbs, we project the two limbs from their given orientation, strike, true dip amount and true dip direction, as great circles on the stereographic projection. Where these two great circles intersect, that point is the projection, a stereographic projection of the line of intersection or the hinge line. Now, to obtain the orientation of the hinge line, we rotate the overlay so that this point, the stereographic projection of the hinge line, lies on any vertical plane, either north south or east west, and measure the distance, the angular distance of this point from the periphery, and mark the direction of the line on the periphery. Now, if we rotate the overlay back to its original position, we will find the amount marked on the overlay and the direction. Thus, the plunge amount of the line and the direction of plunge or trend can easily be calculated. For finding out the interlimb angle of a fold, when we have the orientation of the two limbs, we similarly first draw the stereographic projection of the two limbs. As we have already discussed during the geometrical description of folds, the interlimb angle is defined as the angle between the lines of intersection of the two limbs on the profile plane. So, profile plane, which is perpendicular to the hinge line, can easily be drawn on the stereographic projection. We rotate the overlay in such a manner that the hinge line, the line of intersection of the two limbs, lies on the east west vertical plane. We count out 90 degrees on the opposite side and trace out the great circle that passes through that point. We have the stereographic projection of the profile plane as a great circle. Along this great circle, the angle between the lines of intersection of the two limbs is the interlimb angle. We must remember at this point, however, that on the stereographic projection only the orientation of the planes are projected, not the shape of the structure produced by these two planes. That if you try to visualize three-dimensionally, two intersecting planes may represent any of the four possible folds. A plane striking north-south and dipping 45° towards east, and another plane dipping north-south, striking north-south and dipping 45° to the west, may define an antiform or a synform or a eastward closing neutral fold or a westward closing neutral fold. To know what exactly is the two planes defining, what kind of fold are the two limbs exactly defining, we need to know the orientation of the axial plane. If the fold is an antiform or a synform, the axial plane will be vertical or subvertical, while for neutral folds the axial plane will be horizontal. In case of upright or nearly upright folds, the internal angle will be bisected by the axial plane, it will be the interlimb angle, while in case of neutral folds the external angle will be bisected by the axial plane and the external angle between the two planes will be the interlimb angle. Thus, on the stereographic projection, after we have obtained the projection of the two limbs and the profile plane, we try to find out what is the orientation of the axial plane and accordingly measure either the internal angle or the external angle between the two limbs to find out the interlimb angle. On the stereographic projection, it is also possible to draw the stereographic projection of a plane when the orientation of two lines on it are given. The strike, true dip amount and true dip direction of a plane that passes through these two lines can easily be measured. This technique is often used when in the laboratory, in the practical class, a student is asked to draw the complete orientation or find out the complete orientation of a planar structure when two apparent dips of the plane in two given directions are given or the plunges of two intersecting lineations lying on the plane are given. This method of projecting three-dimensional data on the two dimension is known as azimuthal projection. Apart from stereographic projection, there is another method of azimuthal projection known as equal area projection. In case of stereographic projection, however, we must remember some of the characters. The area of a specific angular size are variable from the center towards the periphery. A 10° by 10° area near the periphery will be larger than a corresponding area near the center. The characteristic of stereographic projection is that it is an equal angle projection, while the other azimuthal projection that are used in structural geology is known as equal area projection, where the size of a fixed angular area is identical near the center or near the periphery. We shall be talking about it later. Before we go into the next topic, let us discuss in brief about how the analysis of structures are done with the help of stereographic projections. When numerous data are measured across a folded surface, we should remember that in nature not all folds are perfectly planar limbs. Even for statistically planar portions of a planar structure, there are minor variations in both strike, true dip amount and true dip direction. That is why we need to plot all the data on a azimuthal projection and obtain a statistical mean. When the planes in an area are all uniformly oriented, with a small scatter about a mean, the poles of the planes are drawn instead of the great circles. Poles means the lines that are perpendicular to the planes, the normals to the planes, which will be plotted as points. When we plot only the poles of a huge number of plane data measured in the field, the diagram is known as a pie diagram. And if instead of the poles, if there are a fewer number of planar data measured in the field, and instead of plotting the normals, we plot the planes itself, the area, a small area where all these planes intersect, will be the beta, or the line of intersection of the planar structures. That will give us an idea about the orientation of the fold hinge as it is measured in the field. In this 2-episode lecture on the analysis of geological structures, in the first episode we have discussed the types of azimuthal projection that are used to treat a large number of data collected in the field. We have discussed in detail the first type of azimuthal projection used, the stereographic projection, the basic principles of stereographic projection, and how to obtain the stereographic projection of lines, planes, how to obtain the orientation of line of intersection between planes, how to obtain the interlimb angle of a fold. These have all been discussed in this episode. We have briefly mentioned the other type of azimuthal projection in use, the equal area projection, which we will be discussing in detail in our next episode, where we will conclude the discussion on analysis of geological structures. Thank you.